Welcome to our Ask OU How-To video series, sponsored by the Harry H. Barron Foundation of Lakewood, New Jersey, and its Ask Outreach program. ASK, Ask OU, stands for Advanced Seminars in Kashrus. Ask Outreach attempts to bring these internationally acclaimed Ask OU Kashrus Shiurim and seminars into the convenience of Kololim, Yeshiva Gedolos, and Smicha programs. With Ask OU How-To videos, we hope to reach out and help Rabbonim, Mashgichim, and aspiring Rabbonim and Mashgichim become familiar with technical kashrus issues so that they can learn how to. On this DVD, you will be able to experience a fascinating shir on Bedikas Toloim given by R.Yosef Eisen in front of a live audience as part of the Ask Outreach Lakewood Kashrus Shiurim given during the winter of Tafshin Samach Tes 2008-2009. Rabbi Eisen, a renowned Bedikas Toloim expert, is the rabbinic administrator of the Vod of the Five Towns and previously was a rabbinic coordinator in charge of food service and Bedikas Toloim at the OU. Rabbi Eisen, Rabbi Yosef Eisen does not presently work for the OU. Someone in the senior management said you could take Yosef Eisen out of the OU, but you can't take the OU out of Rabbi Yosef Eisen. And I think what he meant, the Mitzvah Malio says, Adam writes to the Kapshula, Yosef Itisha Cabbage Chaverei, because if somebody invests something in a chayfetz, so a part of himself is in that chayfetz, and the since the person likes himself, he likes that chayfetz that he created. What I mean to say is that you can't take the OU out of Rabbi Yosef Eisen because he invested tremendous energies in the food service industry that he was connected. Rabbi Schreier, who I mentioned at that time, is a Talmud of Rabbi Yosef Eisen. We heard of the first week of the series. But Rabbi Yosef Eisen is the one who elevated the restaurants and caterers, and also, as part of that, the entire Inyan of Bedikas Toloim. And now, Rabbi Yosef Eisen tells me that the OU serves for Vadim, which he is now the head of the Vod of the Five Towns. So he now, in turn, is benefiting from the fact that he can look at the standards of the OU and help him in his own Vod. And the OU is a role model for Vadim around the country. Rabbi Yosef Eisen is a Rav in Flatbush, and it's a great kavod for us to have him come and join us for Bedikas Toloim, Rabbi Yosef Eisen Shlita.
That's so makdavar, Rabbi Yosef. Thank you. I feel a little bit strange and awkward here in Lakewood talking about Bedikas Toloim. The joke went around about 2 decades ago that if you want to find vegetables with Toloim, just come to Lakewood. For some reason, Rav Pinchas Badner and Rav Shlomo Gissinger would have as much schira that you would need. And it's quite humbling to understand that 19 years after I began with the OU, and Bedikas Toloim was something which was literally battled, other than in selected Mekaymis. Now today, in the most distant areas, people are pashit, being makbid, and understanding the Chaimer Inyan. And I believe that it's very much and primarily due to the fact that individuals such as Rav Pinchas Badner and Rav Shlomo Gissinger from this Lakewood Era Torah were the ones to really be the proponents and set into motion, and even by virtue of the OU coming and being motivated and putting in their koiches and their hishtatvus and shutvus in this parsha Gedoyla v'chamura. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for me to be able to address such an oilam here. Also, a chelik of that achsani is the OU itself, and I appreciate for being such a part of such a tremendous Kiddush Shem Shemayim. I just want to, just as words of introduction, just quote a Gemara. The Gemara says in Bab Mitzvah in Samach Aleph, Tanit Debei Rabbi Shmuel, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ilmolei lo yeleis es Yisrael mi Mitzrayim ela b'shvil davar zeh shei mitamin b'shrotzim. The Gemara says, Daya, it would be enough. Amalei umi nafish adrayu tfei mi ribis mi tzitzis mi mishkalois. Is toilayim more chomer than so many mitzvahs chashuvis in the Torah. Amalei afal gavdoi nafish adrayu zichit tzitzis ribis mishkalois is more schar than zehiris and bedikas toilayim, but tfei me'isi l'michlinu. But it's meshukitz to even think of ingesting something which has insects in it. And Rav Moshe in the Dibris Moshe says something which I think is extremely apropos for beginning this demonstration. And Rav Moshe asks, when the Gemara gives an example of macholes asuris, it chooses shkotzim v'ramasim. And what about the other inyanim of macholis asuros? Why dafka shkotzim ramasim? Rav Moshe says in the Dibris the following. He says the pshat in the Gemara is that even goyim, when they are aware that there's an insect, that there's something which is visible to their eye, and they see it, they are repulsed. They have no, even though it's, they say, full of protein, but still it's something which is disgusting and repulsive to them. So they are zohir also. But when it comes to something which requires a little bit of effort, it's something which requires a little bit of sima slave, that they certainly don't care. What you don't see doesn't hurt you. But Klal Yisrael, he writes, Shem b'delim, u'misrachakim, gam ishrotzim zeirim, she'enum nirin, kimat. Now you could see it, zicha, you could see it, but it's a tircha to see it. V'tarchin u'ma'ayim harbe v'macholim, kadesh li koshel behem. That's what I believe tonight is about. What tonight is about really is not to convince anybody of the chaymer ha'inyan, and one of the reasons when I think the OU invested so much koiches into this sugya. In my day, they allocated, at that time, more than 10 years ago, $20,000 for research of this project. And they put in tremendous resources into this. So, this is a chelik. The purpose of tonight is to be ma'oyer the oilam again into the need and knowledge to understand that this is a sugya which brings tremendous opportunity to a person. As the Or HaChaim HaKadosh writes, Shashomer Atzmai writes, Mimacholois Asurois, Goiver Boy Arotzen L'skarav Lashem, a peladik aloshin, a person that goes ahead and is shoymim Mimacholois Asuris, he's Goiver Boy Rotzen L'skarav Lashem, L'tayrosai U'L'mitzvoisav, Heyois v'Michael marbe v'nishmasai u'belibai es ha'ora elyon shel tariseinu akdoisha. An unbelievable lashon from just showing and wanting to be able to be medactic in inyanim tolayim. And just one more quote from the Avnei Nezi writes in the Tshuva Yeridea. Just these words itself, I think this is enough of an inspiration to say, you know what, let's find out a little bit more about what the issues are, and are we doing enough, and are we being zohar enough. The Avnei Nezi writes, Yisrael Kedoshim Hein, B'vada Yishmu writes at the end of the Tshuva, V'sovay Aleim Birkas Toiv B'shomer Atzma Mishrotzim. A person who always wants bracha, Asher Iker Kedushas Yisrael Toli B'zeh. So tonight we're going to endeavor. There are many chilukei deis in the kashrus agencies on how to deal with the inyanim of tolayim. What I'm bringing to you tonight, I believe, is a very accurate picture of the Metzias Hadvarim, an accurate picture of information being filtered in by the most, I think, suitable source and reliable source and authentic information channel that we could have, and that's the mashgichim in the field. The mashgichim in the field that literally spend days on end, hours every single day doing this, and constantly are coming back with information. That's what we're going to try to convey to you. Just one more word. You know, we had a wonderful presentation of wine production, and we even saw what it takes to be able to produce a piece of bubble gum. But over here, the issue that we're presenting now is something which empowers you directly, because you now become the mashgichim. And if it's not you, and it's if your wives and it's the women in the house, you're the mifakech, the one that's giving them the information. So certainly that this is something which could make a difference in one's home and does make a difference in one's home. So without any further ado, I'm going to switch over the place where I'm standing over to the table. What we're going to do tonight is, Bez Hashem, we're going to have the following Seder. I'm going to try to give you a quick background into different vegetables. Obviously, we didn't take all the vegetables that you use, but a good deal of the ones that we mamish use on a weekly basis in your houses, and be able just to give you a little bit of background. What I'm going to talk a little bit about, being that this is a demonstration which discusses practices and methods of the way that these things are done in a commercial environment, in a restaurant, in a caterer. And I'm going to try to also integrate at the same time what has to be done in the home, because obviously you can understand there's a big difference in if you have to check 5 cases of parsley or 3 cases of parsley versus 2 bunches, or if you're checking 50 or 60 heads of romaine lettuce versus if you're checking 2 or 3. So without any further ado, I'm going to switch over and then we're going to begin the demonstration. Let's talk about the most common type of salad item, produce, that's, I think, used in most homes. Romaine lettuce, which really was a item which I believe have become popular, very popular in the last 15 to 20 years, much more than it was, other than having this as a min to be Makai Mitzvah Smar. Otherwise, during the year, most people didn't use romaine lettuce. Today, it's been proven, the mumchim say that iceberg lettuce, although it's certainly healthier than tangy taffy, but there's no nutritional value in iceberg lettuce. 0. It's a filler, but the nutritional value are in the open leaf lettuces. What do I mean open leaf lettuce? An open leaf lettuce is known as romaine lettuce, or green leaf, or red leaf. Napa lettuce, which is called also Chinese lettuce. These lettuces are grown open. They're grown in a way where it allows the insects to jump in from the soil into the lettuce itself, mamish till the harvest. The way that it grows like a flower, in contrast to a lettuce head, iceberg lettuce head, which grows in balls as a ball and just adds layers as it matures and it grows, giving insects less of an opportunity to jump in. And certainly cabbage, which is a tighter type of a ball, but open leaf lettuces have a wonderful window of opportunity, simply to the end of when it's cut off and put into a bag. Therefore, you could find insects on the outer leaves, you could find insects literally in the second leaf, the third leaf, and also in the very inside leaves. And even if you check the outside leaves, it's no raya. So, what's the eitzah? So, what mashgichim are challenged with is to be able to take a huge amount of this product and be able to process it in a way where it's not going to make the balabas ready to kill them because they're spending an entire day on lettuce and they have so many other responsibilities. So systems have been developed in the kashrus agencies to be able to do it effectively, comprehensively, and yet move along and do it in a way where it's not going to bog them down. So the popular choice recently, in the last 2 or 3 years, being that they realized that time is money, was to switch over from whole romaine lettuce heads to romaine hearts. And that really is something which is very highly recommended. The reason why is because a romaine heart is a premium product. The company themselves sell it at a higher price. They take better care of lettuce heads that are going to be sold as a romaine heart because they could charge more money. And the mila with the romaine heart is that it does not have the outer leaves. The outer leaves are removed, so even if insects which tend to go to the outer leaves a little bit more because they're greener, the more deep green a leaf is, the more the insect is attracted to that color. And the mela, by removing those 4 or 5 layers of outer leaves, you now get to the heart. Once you're at the heart, then the following is done in the restaurants, and we're going to then jump over to your homes as well. What they do is the mashgiach takes the heart, and they remove the bottom of it. They remove the stem. After removing the stem, they take the heart, they place it, generally they're using a tremendous amount of this, so they fill up a sink, we hope a clean sink, and they place it into the sink. Not having lack of a sink, we'll call this a sink, and they fill it up with water. After they fill it up with cold water, they put some type of a soapy solution, whatever that might be, whether it's something like a vegetable wash, or it might be even just regular dishwashing liquid, which is come out the same thing. If we were in Lakewood, we could be Hamish, let's call it dishwashing liquid. They take dishwashing liquid and they put it into the sink, and they make sure that the soap is of such a consistency that the water feels soapy, it's slippery. After they let it soak for 5 minutes or so, they take the entire product, which is now sitting in a bath of a soapy solution, they agitate it, because as Rav Moshe Vaya, who really is the Veltz Mumcha in this sugya, is the very staunch proponent of not soaking leaves in vinegar. Vinegar, he feels, is passé, is something which is not nearly as effective as soap, because soap, if it loosened your cholent leftover from the plate, it's certainly going to loosen an insect from its grip on the leaf. So therefore, once it's sitting there and it's soaking in soap, you agitate it, you shake it around in the sink, and then you take each leaf, and this is the critical chalik of taking each leaf and spreading out the leaf, because if you ever have a insect that wants to hide, the place that it's going to hide is in a crevice or in a fold. So it's going to choose an area such as this, which is the fold, and it's going to stay in there. And that's why if you don't open up the lettuce leaf completely when you're washing it on both sides, it's very olol that you're going to have an insect somewhere in its hidden area, because the instinct that the Rebbeinu Olam even put into these small little insects is to find a haven and a safe spot in the leaf. After you've soaked it up and down, with the water going from up from the top of the leaf to the bottom of the leaf, exposing all the crevices and folds. You place it then after it's been washed, and some mashgichim even dry it. They dry it in a spinner when they're using a lot. The purpose of the spinner is really twofold. First of all, to allow the lettuce to last longer, because if it's moist and it's wet, it's not going to last. And zweitens, the second reason is because when they actually check the leaf, if there are droplets of water, it obscures the clarity of looking at the leaf for insects. Now, the best thing to do, which they do, is to use a commercial size light box, which this is the size of a commercial size light box. They put it on. Literally, you could see everything because the light is coming from the bottom. Just to jump over into your own homes, a very similar process is done in your own homes. You're not using, you don't have to open up you don't have to empty out a sink, but what you could do is you take a pan, a regular disposable 9x13 pan, or if it's larger, if you're using the larger amount, and you let it soak there for 5 minutes. You go through the same process, and you then take each leaf, you wash it, rinse it with a strong stream. A light stream is not going to do anything. A heavy stream is going to go down the leaf. Then you go ahead and check it. Now, till recently, if you wanted to use a light box in your own home and you used a lot of vegetables, a lot of produce, it was a bulky, big box like we're looking at on this table. But in the last year or two, they came out with small little boxes called light boxes. They call it a bug checker, which runs on battery, which is very convenient. And that is something which is kedai. If you don't want to go ahead and start checking, you don't have a good area in your kitchen where you could look at the sunlight, this is the perfect thing to do. Now, this process that we said, just now described with romaine hearts, that is also negeya to other things as well. It's negeya to a leaf. This is called Chinese cabbage, which this is used a lot in the restaurants. It's not generally used at home. It's a little bit bitter. But when this is put into chopped up and put this into a stir-fry type of a thing, it's very tasty. But also, if you notice, these leaves could come apart easily, and that also allows the insects to just go somewhere in the middle. It's hard to look at the same time and talking, but we'll be able to look at and see and be able to view some insects. But this is the idea with all these open leaf lettuces. The reason why they're much more nageya to toiloyim is because they have an open growth and only close at the very end. You have a similar idea when you have cabbage. Cabbage already is a little bit different, as I explained to you before, simply because cabbage grows differently. Cabbage grows in a ball, and as it grows, it adds layer by layer. So the insects that you're going to find in cabbage are a little bit different than the insects you find in the other lettuces. The insects that you primarily find in cabbage is an insect called the thrips. Now, thrips, even in singular form, it's referred to as a thrips. If you want to know what it looks like, if you take a dollar bill, and you could find from the 1900 series of a dollar bill, the one of the 1900 digit series, that's the size, and that's what kimat a thrips looks like. That this thrips is generally the insect that you find in cabbage. It's very easy to discern. If you're using a white cabbage, you see it right away. So what you're supposed to do with cabbage is the following. And what mashgichim do are the following, that they actually remove the outer parts of the cabbage, what they're going to discard anyway, and then, depending on the cabbage, this happens to be very small cabbage, the cabbages that they use in a restaurant or in a caterer are much larger heads, and each layer of the cabbage leaves are generally have 2 leaves per layer. Now, what the mashgichim do is that they remove about 4 or 5 layers, which consists of about 6 to 8 leaves, and they look at those leaves. It's very easy to look at. It takes a very short amount of time, simply because the contrast of a black thrips, which usually that's what they look like, is a very easy contrast to be able to tell immediately. So this is something which is done very frequently because there could be tons of cabbage that are checked during the course of a day. Remember what cabbage is used for: coleslaw, cabbage salad. Now, if you, interestingly enough, for stuffed cabbage, the insects, once frozen, does not have any grip any longer on the leaf. And whatever grip it might have had gets lost when it's frozen. So if you are making stuffed cabbage, which also you're using larger heads, what you have to do is freeze it for 48 hours. After you freeze it for 48 hours, the cabbage gets very deeply frozen. After it's deeply frozen, you could remove the leaves. The way the leaves are removed from cabbage that's frozen, it's either thawed out and peeled away, or it's cooked a little bit, and this way it makes it easier to peel. After that point in time, you just have to take it under water and just rinse it, also opening up the crevices that might be found on the cabbage leaf, and then no checking is necessary. The reason why is because there's never going to be an opportunity for that thrips to ever have a grip on the leaf. So you just have to rinse it off and just leave it as it is. The next parsha that I want to talk about is something which really emanated from Lakewood, and that was the issue of broccoli. Even though broccoli it's not oivel asaycha necessarily, fresh broccoli here, but there are people that enjoy broccoli, and especially if you're looking for something nutritious, we know our president for another 10 days liked broccoli a lot. That was a joke. He liked broccoli. But I just want to give you an understanding in, the problem of broccoli for you to see firsthand. I brought some broccoli from the 5 towns. It just happens to be broccoli that was regular, good quality broccoli that was ready to be used. And I asked some mashgichim that if you happen to be checking some broccoli and you happen to find the toilayim in the broccoli, bring it to me. I'm making a presentation in Lakewood. I'd like to show the items. So, first of all, I want to share with you the mitzias of what's done in restaurants, and a chiddush that one of the mashgichim in the 5 towns had, a geoinish chiddush in broccoli, if you could say such a thing. Let me share with you what he said. Normally, when you go to a Chinese restaurant, they take a case of broccoli and they just remove the florets from the individual heads. You could have a case, and in the case, you could have a case that has 20 or 24 heads, and then they just go ahead and they cut away, they separate the florets, they leave a little bit of stem, they separate the florets from the head. You could have a whole gigantic bin, which is made up of a dozen heads or even more. And the mashgiach goes ahead and he checks each individual floret. Now, with broccoli, even if you're going to say that after you're finished with a romaine lettuce head, a romaine heart, and you've washed it and you've checked for 2 years you've been doing this, you've never found an insect. Because be'emes, if you follow this procedure that I detailed and do it well and thorough, you will never find an insect after you wash it. If it's a good soapy solution and it's something which has a decent amount of water and a good amount of water pressure, you'll not find an insect. Without soap, I've seen myself, just Agav talking back about romaine lettuce, when they were producing for Pesach one year with Ashgacha, and it was certified in the way that it said the following: ready to be used, as it is. I was sitting and learning Erev Pesach a couple of days before Pesach in the koil of my shul, and somebody comes in and says, "Listen," he said, "did you see what's going on?" I said, "No." He said, "We're bringing you the head of certified romaine lettuce." They brought me out a certified romaine lettuce, and it was like more than a minion was in that bag. And I immediately went to the kitchen in my shul, and I took the romaine lettuce leaf under water, and they started to spray the insects, the 2 or 3 insects that was there. They were better than Hawaiian surfers. They were holding on to that leaf. Mamish did not move from that leaf. So if you don't take anything which will loosen the grip, it can stay there from behind this bias hagoyel. It's not going to move. But once you place the leaf into a soapy solution and rinse it with the water pressure, it's going to be removed. Masha'ain came with the broccoli. The broccoli, the problem is that if they're in the florets, they're not coming loose. They're not coming out. So what happens, the mashgiach has a whole bin of broccoli. He takes each one, he leafs through each one, because that's, even if you found half a case clean, and even if you found 10 cases clean, it's not meichiach. It has no raya for the next head. And you open up the leaf. In the depths of the floret, that's where you're going to find the insect. And if you put it, you could send this broccoli floret down Niagara Falls, and it's not going to help you. It's going to still be inside the depths of that floret. And just to give you an idea, I'm holding now what would seem to be a this is a perfectly good piece of broccoli. You discover insects in this piece. Now all of a sudden, this piece has a raisin, as I'm going to show you. I'm going to open up this piece. I'm going to show you what I found, what was found here. So now, it's very likely that the ikareisa of this floret came from the head. But now go figure out where the head came from, now it's already mixed up with 10 other heads. So there's no way to even know. Normally you'd say, if I could know that this floret that came from this particular head had insects in it, so the race is in this head, and I'll be much more careful with this head. But once it got already misariv, on a practical basis, there's no way to be able to tell. So this mashgiach had this einfal. He said, what you should do is that every mashgiach should take an entire head and only check it by the head. As we're going to describe the process of what they do, check it while it's attached to the head. So this way, if you find that in a floret, you find the insects in a floret, at least you'll have the opportunity to watch that particular head with greater care. You'll be able to check with greater care. And it was a gewaldige Einfall. And that's what's done, at least I know in many places, that's what the mashgiach does, versus going and having to, once he found in the bin one floret, having to go through the entire bin in such a careful way. But just to show the oilam a little bit with overhead projection of what I mean by not being able to tell. So this is a floret. So what you have to do is the following. That there are different chilukei days on the best way to deal with broccoli. The emes is, since we're in the town of Lakewood, I'm going to first present the mahalach that Rav Shlomi Gissinger has, and that's what's used in places under his hashgacha, is that they soften up the broccoli, and then they put it into a clear Pyrex dish as such. They fill it up with water, and they actually bang the floret inside the water. They bang it inside the water, each floret individually. They give it a good clap. Then they take the Pyrex, they put it on top of the light box, and at that point of time, look at the light box. And if they see that there are floating bugs on top, they discard the entire floret. This malach was used for a long time, until personally the mashgichim would complain and say, listen, by the time you figure out what's a floret shedding, because once you bang it, the little pieces of the broccoli shed. So by the time you finish, you have to visit an eye doctor at the end of the day, and who knows what you could have at the end of the year. So, alternative mahalach was to actually parboil for a very short period of time the broccoli head, enough time, 2 or 3 minutes, just to get it soft. Because if you're not going to get it soft, what happens in checking raw broccoli, you just break it apart. It's like it's kosher k'etz. It's not pliable. But if you put it into either a microwave for 2 or 3 minutes or cook it for 2 or 3 minutes, it becomes pliable, and then the mashgiach is able to check it. So once he's already cooked it, he has to actually pry open the floret and look at the floret for insects. For a moment.
Oh, behind the door.
Okay, now you can shut it off now because now maybe the camera could just get a hold of that. It's just
Off?
yeah. Now I just needed to find it.
A real off.
Wow. A second.
One tighter?
You have it?
Oh, I got it. See it? Come on tighter?
That.
You're going tighter.
Everybody see this?
Right over there. Now, if you notice this, it's brown. It's on top. It's on top. It's on top. No, it's this right under my nail.
Under your nail?
It's on your finger. Do you see it now?
The light is very
Now that.
Wow.
That. Wow. That. Now that is a very large aphid. It's mistama, one of the malachim of the aphids. Just like that, the chamisha malachim. It's a very big aphid. Now this aphid is just one. If you look at the other parts of the broccoli, which is hard to find when it's so dark. But this started off very green. What happens when you parboil it is that now don't mind you, I don't know anything besides the 7th grade time when I learned about chlorophyll. But beyond that, I don't know anything about chlorophyll. But the insects lose their chlorophyll, lose that green, and now they become discernible. The mashgiach, you're able, Pasha, to be able to spot this immediately. And it's not only one, this particular floret, but you have another one right over here. You could, much smaller one. Now, you see that? Right over there. You turn it drop? No.
Left side?
Right on top of the nail.
Right on top of the nail. 1 second.
Where, this?
No, that's the first one.
Right on top of the nail.
Right there.
Down there?
Down here. No.
Down
To the left. More to the left.
This? This?
Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
It's moving. It's right over there. You see it?
You gotta get nervous.
Right over there. You see that?
Oh, yeah.
Right over there.
Put your hand up, right there.
Brother, that's it?
No, to the right. To the right.
Is he focused on right there? Is that him?
Go to the right there.
Right over there. You see it right in front of you. Right there. That's it. A much smaller one. Rabbi Sayyid, I want to tell you, with this, I had such a piece of broccoli in my hand, one Erev Shabbos, talking to a Rav Machsher, which had produced, it was a newer company, it was a newer company on the scene, and it was producing broccoli. And I had a bag in my hand, I had a broccoli in my hand, it was Erev Shabbos. And as I was talking to him, I was counting the insects. When I got to 39, I stopped. I said, you have to do me a favor. even Shabbos is coming, there's not even more than Lamed Tes Malachas. There was mamish 39 insects in one floret that was like this. 39, and I stopped at 39, and there were more. And looking close, and it's a little fashimel by now, but this is the mitzias of broccoli. Broccoli could be so terrible, so how do the big companies do it? That's why it can only come frozen, because be'emes, the frozen broccoli, at least up to now, we're not talking about things which are grown in greenhouses, but the emes is that frozen broccoli could only be yielded during certain times of the year, when it's winter, when it's very cold, when the insects don't propagate, when they don't reproduce. Otherwise, the only way to check them push is to go inside the floret, inside all the way into the depths of the floret. And then you can see the insects itself. I have another one over here. You see?
Move your hand away, Sonny.
Yeah. Right over there, right over there, right over there. You see? Keep it. Right over there. See the black? See that? You see that brown one? No, the brown. You see the brown? The brown spot. You see? Where?
Smack that
The brown spot is staring you right in front of your eye. No.
High, up 3 feet.
Right over there,
Yeah, that's it, right there, bang.
Right over there. Oh, now you can see.
Now you can see. What's next to it? It looks like one next to it.
No,
That's the scary part.
That's the scary part. Rabbi say that is the saga with broccoli, and Yasher Chelich to the people in the Rabbanim that brought this to the Olam's Yediyah more than 2 decades ago. But this is what can be seen by anybody that does a little bit of a Tfias Ayin could notice that. I want to just go over to the. Could you get this piece over here on the light box? Will that be right over here? Is a thrip. Okay, let's 1 second. 1 second. Let me circle it. Yeah, there it goes.
What is it?
That's a thrips right over here.
In what vegetable is it?
In what vegetable? Okay. It would be easy to tell what vegetable it isn't in.
It's fine.
The vegetables that thrips are found are kumat, every single herb, parsley, dill, cilantro, thyme, marjoram, oregano, basil, spinach. They're all over. But the mila with thrips are that they don't have any grip on the vegetable. And once they don't have any grip on the vegetable, they just, as soon as they come in contact with any type of water pressure, they're off the leaf. Masha'ain came with the aphids that I showed you in the broccoli. When you find those aphids on lettuce leaves, which they're found in open lettuce leaves, so then they have something called a needle in front of their body called the proboscis. This proboscis allows the insect to dig in and push it stay there. It will not move, even with water pressure, unless it's loosened with a type of a soapy solution. So just going a little bit further into the herbs. I want to talk about herbs because herbs are very different than, we spoke about lettuce, the same mahalach that we described with cabbage, the same mahalach as iceberg lettuce, because iceberg lettuce also grows in the similar way that cabbage does, and it would be checked in the same process as cabbage. It's a little more prone to have insects because it's looser. And that's why it's kedai, if you're using your own lettuce, iceberg lettuce, that when you go shopping to try to get a firm one rather than a loose one, because the tighter it is, the less chance of insect it's going to have. But talking about another type of item which is used also by many people are herbs. Herbs include everything that I mentioned, cilantro and dill and parsley. They also include basil, oregano, arugula. These are all considered herbs. Now the problem with many of these herbs is that it's very difficult to check them visually. Shtel zichvar, imagine. You want to use dill. How are you going to check dill? First of all, many herbs that are dry, like there's an herb called rosemary or thyme, they're dry herbs. So a way to see if it's even kedai to deal with is you clap them. You do a shyness on them. You clap them over a white paper towel, and many times they will fly out. But with something similar to dill or parsley, it's very wet. It comes from the supermarket, very wet. So it's very hard to be even able to do a pre-test by banging them. So what's the Eisen not to use them? So one Eisen is people go ahead and they use these bodek bags and they just satisfy the flavor. But let's say if you want to use the actual herb, is there any Eisen? So the Eisen is the following. It's been developed and proven that there is such a mahalach, and this mahalach is a little more difficult in the home, but this is what they do in restaurants. What they do in restaurants is the following, that they will fill up a sink of dill, of a whole case of dill or a whole case of parsley, and they'll take a sink and fill it up with soapy water. They'll let it sit there for 5 minutes, they'll shake the water, they'll make a sort of simulate a turbulence in the water to be able to loosen the grip of the insects on the actual stem or at the actual leaf. They'll remove the entire bunch of herbs and they will rinse it. Now it's sitting in a soapy solution. They remove it, it's in their hands now under a heavy stream of water. They're going to rinse them. Now, this is the next step, and we'll talk about what to do in the house as well if you have the ambition to use these fresh herbs. Then what you could do, what they do is that they fill up a second sink, or they have to empty the first sink, they don't have a second sink, rinse it, and fill it up again with plain water. And then they put the vegetables in the plain water. Now, what's the svara? Just to make you understand what the mahalach hamachshava over here is in doing this. What you're doing now is that after you washed it with soap, which will hopefully loosen any insects that are there, and then when you rinsed it, you weiter took away insects. So now what you're doing is that you're putting it in cold water, and you're really giving it a good shake, and you're loosening the actual vegetable with your hands, you're rubbing it, you're touching it. And then you remove the product from the sink, and then you take some water samples. You take a shissel like this, a Pyrex glass receptacle, you fill it with water, you put it on a light box, and you look at the sample water. If there were insects there, the water is going to pick them up because they went into the clean water. In a bad product, you will find that even if you take one sample or two samples, you're going to find insects in that water. And especially if it's on a light box, it immediately becomes nicker la'ayin that they're there. So that is, and then after they take that out, they dry the product, they dry the parsley, they dry the dill, and they physically check some samples on the light box as well. But the ikar bedika for these type of herbs is the water bedika, because there's no other eitzah. And that's really what has to be done in one's home also. Obviously on a smaller basis, using 1 or 2 bunches to actually go ahead and take the water sample and look at the water sample to see that. If a person doesn't want to take a chance, which I can certainly understand that, then the only eitzah is to take it inside a bag, to take it in very tight mesh cheesecloth, and after you rinse it, after you go ahead and take a good amount of water, on the product after it's been washed with a little soap, to put it inside the bag, and then that would be certainly sufficient. Now let me just talk about one or two other things, and then maybe we'll take questions. I want to talk about an issue which is an issue of invulav v'rafia b'yodenu. In Eretz Yisrael, there's a type of an insect that exists that is very common. It's found in basil, it's found a lot in spinach, it's found in parsley, it's found in romaine lettuce, it's found in scallions. This insect is called a leaf miner. This leaf miner is inside the flesh of the actual produce. What does it mean inside the flesh? What happens is that a worm migrates from the soil onto the vegetable. After it migrates from the soil onto the vegetable, it picks at the vegetable. The mashgiach in one of Rav Moshe Vaya's places explained this to me. It finds that it just keeps on picking until it finds a little hole. It doesn't have a skeletal structure, so it's able to wiggle inside the spinach leaf, inside the basil, inside the scallion. And it's a one-way trip. Sham tehei tikover. It dies inside because it can't get out. So what it does, it eats away. It has much food that it could dream of, but it platzes because it can't get out. It dies in the spot. Some of them don't die, and some of them are live worms inside the produce that we're talking about. Now, if you're going to say that this is the case, how is it possible to be forewarned? Where's the takana l'davar? Is there such a mitzvah say you just pasha can't eat all of these things? So it's interesting that the takana l'davar is something which is very nikolaian. And I'm going to show you over here in a moment. Once it goes in there, it has to eat. One of the aspects that makes a human and an animal different than a malach, it's machnis and it's moitzi. It has to be moitzi what it was machnis. So what it does is that it makes a trail. It eats away at a trail because it eats out inside the actual item. It makes a trail, and it speckles the trail with black dots. That's the site of this particular worm. So it may memela, even though you can't tell that the worm is in there, but you can immediately tell the trail because the trail is squiggly, and the black dots are generally right there. Now, this item, this leaf miner, in Eretz Yisrael, is zicher amira matzah. And it would be mechuyev in bedika. How you baidik it? You baidik it by looking at the item, and immediately you could tell it in the flash of an eye. You could tell that the trail is there. You could tell that the dots are there. In America already, this is something which is not pashut. The statistics of trying to figure out whether basil or whether scallions or spinach, besides the surface insects, which you can take off with water and soap, you can't take this off with water and soap. It's inside the flesh of the leaf. So what's the eitzah? The eitzah is only a visual inspection. A visual inspection on every single thing, even though there's certain things that you cannot visually inspect, but the items which are subject to have a chashash of a leaf miner have to have visual bedika. Let me just show you one example of this trail. One on the line box, it's easier. There's a trail. You want to get that right away? Very good. You see that trail? Now, over there, the camera cannot pick up the black dots, but there are black dots there. Right over here, where my finger is, there's a black, you can't see it.
Nothing else to be trying for a second.
You see, no, you see the
Stop like that. Take away the light.
yeah, right over there. You see the black squiggly line? In this, there is a worm in this scallion. This trail over here that you see is a trail that is found in spinach, in basil, sometimes in the summer in romaine lettuce. The point is, somebody that wants to be zor, this is a meleches hakodesh. It's such a hafladik lashon that I quoted to you from the Orach Chaim. This is Pashit making the effort to make sure that what you're eating is outside of Yosef Toiv. And the Maila in this particular discussion of leaf miners, which really is something which many people are not aware of, it's so easy to spot because you're going to spot the squiggly line. You're going to spot the squiggly line right away. Maybe towards the end, I don't want to hold the oilam. It's already very late. So maybe in a few minutes, if you really want, because I want to discuss one or two more things, I'll take out the worm from this squiggly line. It could be in Toronto when I did this, there was a koil, one of the choshev koils in Toronto. We're learning to Hilchos Tiloyim, and I gave a two-part lecture, one for the mashgichim and one for the rabbanim of the shtat and the koil yungalite. It was a pella. I thought one rav would need oxygen because I carefully removed. I had like 3 scallions, and every single one of them they were alive. So the pasha was crawling out. I don't know if this one is alive, but we'll maybe see afterwards. But I just want to discuss 2 more things, and then we can take questions. The 2 other items are people that like mushrooms, portobello mushrooms. The portobello mushroom, the problem with the mushroom is in the fan there could be flies. So over here is a very pashut eitzah. In this fan is where the flies might be. Very often when you open up a case, which is not the normal thing which you see in a household, but in a restaurant, mashgichim open up a case, and if there is a problem, pashut, they'll see insects flying. The eitz over here, which is done in the restaurants, and it can be done in the household as well, is just to take a spoon and scrape out this fan, and after you scrape out the fan, just to wash it under water, and that's it. It's a very simple process. Talking about simple processes and something which you could use at home is with asparagus. It's interesting, the way that this was discovered, that asparagus is so full of insects, is the OU used to give hashgacha on green giant asparagus. And they got a complaint from a person that they opened up a can and they dumped it in the, to warm it up, and all of a sudden they noticed there was an Olympic team of swimmers in the water. There was swimming all over the place. So they were trying to figure out, so where do these insects, where do they come from? So it's a davar nifla if I show you the following. That these triangles, the way that asparagus grows, and this is grada what Bodek does to get non-infested asparagus. The way that asparagus grows is that there's a very short period of time from the time that the asparagus crowns the ground, meaning it starts going up cracking through the soil, and then it grows to full maturity, which could be a week. And what happens is that they begin growing. As they grow, these small triangles are not there yet. But what happens is that if you notice, there's like a little bump that comes out of every triangle, like a ledge. What happens is that as this crowns the ground and goes up, the thrips also crawl on here, and they find a makom lanuach. They push it, they go ahead, and they rest right on this ledge, and all of a sudden, it's like hikoyin diyoina, and a little thing grows on top of it, and it conceals them. So you could be looking at an asparagus and see nothing. We ended up in the OU to discover this, to even confirm this even weiter. I remember that part of that $20,000 that I mentioned to you earlier when we began was a project that we hired 4 people, 4 different parts of the country. In New Jersey, New York, in Florida, and in the West Coast. And they came back with information. And they would come back that asparagus sold as a bunch, they would constantly find. And where would they find? They would find under these triangles. So if a person has a cheshik to use asparagus, the way they use asparagus, you have to break off the tip, which supposedly they say is the best part of it. You have to break off the tip, and then you have to take a vegetable peeler and just peel off the sides. And then the asparagus can be washed, and there's no chashash weiter. So it's also very similar to be able to use, if a person does have a particular taste for asparagus, that's the way to do it. The last thing I wanted to discuss before I take questions is strawberries. Now, strawberries is a zach which 2 years ago created a major tumult. I never really understood the value of a strawberry, and I wanted to be magia, lashon and a mishnah, al shloshim dvarim ha'olam oimed. And I thought maybe there was a fourth, like when strawberries, people were very, I didn't realize how passionate people are about strawberries, but people could get pretty passionate about strawberries. Especially caterers could get very passionate about strawberries. But Lamaisa, what happened with the strawberries, I'm sure you heard over again, that there was a certain... Where?
Make it wider. Pull back. Pull back. Go to the left. That's it. Other side. Aim it better.
Anyway, so just to take another strawberry, what happened in California? What happened was that it's there. What happened in the West Coast? That usually the type of insects that were in a strawberry were really 3 types of insects, but 2 more commonly: thrips and spider mites. Thrips are what I showed you before, and a spider mite is smaller. It's like red, and it has claws. But if you soak it in soap and wash it thoroughly under a heavy stream of water, everything came off. And that's what they were doing for years on end. People were able to enjoy strawberries without any chashashas. The cleaning system was a very simple system. Everybody adapted it, everybody used it, everybody enjoyed it. And 2 years ago, it was discovered a very big problem. And that's what the restaurants did. The restaurants would do a tremendous amount of strawberries in a short period of time because they just needed to soak in a big sink in soapy water. Each one was individually washed with the mashgiach taking his fingers over the strawberry, which was done in the household no differently. And then all of a sudden, 2 years ago, they discovered that there's something called a thrips larva. This thrips larva, I'm sure you've seen, it was going around in certain emails that had, did I say the wrong word? Okay, it was going around in certain pictures that this thrips larva, what it did is it was so small that it hooked around the seed crevice. It went into every single seed has a little crevice that it comes from. And the thrips larva was so small that some of them, and it also it had a certain texture to it that it was very sticky. So you would take the strawberries and soak them. And even after you soak them, you do shif yad on the strawberry, and afal pikain, after washing them kama pamim, after you thought they were clean, after washing them kama pamim, it would still come up. Somebody over here in Lakewood, who's a mumcha gadol, did checking. He checked more than 400 strawberries, and he found, after 400 strawberries, he found with a very aggressive wash that he found 1. And this was a very big tumult. So this was something which the OU Poiskim donned on, and they held that if it's dealt with in a certain way and washed, they felt that it's mutter, since the amount was such a amount which was so minuscule, and it was a good chance that you were able to eliminate them all, they took the position that if it's the certain instructions are followed, they were makabel. Other hashkachas were not along that line, and there was chilukei deis in the kashrus world. And based on that, that even went weiter into the frozen strawberries, because the frozen strawberries also were very difficult. They had to ascertain that in order to certify a certain strawberry, they no longer were able to be soymich on the wash. Normally what they did is that the companies that made frozen strawberries put it in a big flume, in a flume that had a lot of turbulence, and the turbulence and the chlorine of the water would take out anything that was there on the strawberry, and that's why they were able to produce frozen strawberries clear and free without any shilas. But once this Thrips larva came, the matara of the hashgacha was to be able to go into a field and ascertain that this field was not lokui, this field was not problematic, and didn't have any Thrips larva strain in the strawberries. So it wasn't matter, once it was there, there's nothing to do about it. That was a line of certain hashgachas. So this is a story with strawberries. The problem, an additional problem with strawberries, is that even if mashgiach is going to figure out, assuming that a person wants to say, listen, I could live without strawberries, and a mashgiach wants to go ahead, and a person wants to use a strawberry in the summer. So you'll say, you know what, strawberries in the summer, I understand the summer months are more problematic, I'm going to use them in the winter months. But the problem is that there's nobody really checking them, because to check them is such a tedious task. It costs a lot of money. None of the hashgachas want to take the hashgachas that aser strawberries in the summer, aser them the whole winter as well also. And the reason for that is because every single post-summer, you have to hire people to be moitzing the strawberries from the reisa. And that's a tedious and expensive task. So some people just say, you know what, I'm just going to place a strawberry on the Mizbeach Lashem. There's certain things, Rav Vigdam always used to say, there's certain things that a person should make sure that when he comes up to Shemaim to say, Rabbeinu Shalom, there was no Mizbeach B'chayi, but there were certain things that I was makriv on the Mizbeach. I'm makriv strawberries on the Mizbeach, so put that on your list of things that one person wants to be makriv. If a person wants to take that line, as I said before, the hashgachas and the OU as well, that feel, and their place can feel that it's mutter. So this is something which is shani v'machlaikis, and ma'akid islay. I just want to be able to conclude with a moiridik ma'isa. It's Matzah Shabbos, and I don't know how much of a chassid show, but the Olam wants to hear ma'isa. I'm going to tell you a 30-second ma'isa. Rav Chatzkel Abramsky, just to talk about the Indian of Zahiris. Rav Chatzkel Abramsky, who was a Rav in London for 20 years before he emigrated to Eretz Yisrael, had a following ma'isa. He never wanted to eat from a shaychit that was old. He felt that there was certain inyanim that he wanted to be machmir. He didn't feel comfortable with a person that was a little elderly, that he felt that his hand was not as sturdy and steady as it should be for a shaychit. He only wanted to eat from a younger shaychit. He went to Switzerland for a vacation, and he went ahead and he was boidik the shaychitim of the ear, and he found that there were two shaychitim. There was a younger shaychit and an older shaychit. And he told the person who was staying by that he wants to be makbid only to have basar or chicken, whatever he was eating, from the younger shaychit. So anyway, he went ahead and he sat down to eat. As he's sitting and eating, they bring him the soup. And as he's eating the soup, he notices that there's an amola in the soup. There's an ant in the soup. So he didn't eat. And he pushed the soup away, and then the balabas didn't notice it, and he went to bring him the main dish, whatever the chicken, the main dish. And he looks at Rav Chatzkel and he says, "You didn't eat the soup." So he says, "Yeah, I didn't eat the soup." His hate, and he showed him in the mullah. And the balabas picked up his hand and he said, "The Rabbeinu Shalom is shoymit tzadikim." He says, "It happens that I found out afterwards that they couldn't get the basar, what they made the soup with, from the younger shaykhit, so they got the older shaykhit to get it." So mamish, you see that the Rabbeinu Shalom is showing those that people that go out of their way, attack. It's a tremendous shmir. We just have to be able to exercise a little bit of caution, and the Rabbeinu Shalom will show us and be matar nafshenu, to be zeicher to be able to Hashem itach simcha.
R.Yosef.